Review copy provided by MegaCat Studios.
Ooh, yeah! 122 achievements unlocked, 74 opponents entered into the WrestlePedia, over 20 legendary wrestlers experienced, all done over 1.5 playthroughs totaling 90 hours of pure wrestling goodness. It must be the season of completion, yeah, cause he's here, the beard that must be feared, the gamer Hall of Famer, the man who puts the kill in Khalil, the one, the only Completionist. Ooh, yeah!
Thank you, Mr. Man. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Today, we're looking at a game that I have been dying to get my hands on, WrestleQuest. So lace up your boots and ring that bell, because we're going to WrestleQuest!
Whoa, yeah!
It's the best we could do. The Macho Man's no longer with us.
Me he rest in peace.
Yes! All glory goes to the winner! Game over! Wake up! Last one standing wins!
I love wrestling. I love video games. So it would stand to reason that I love wrestling video games. But after decades and decades of playing various different WWE games, they all kind of blended together with only a few standouts. You see, wrestling games have succumbed to the maddenification of sports titles. Every year, things remain pretty much the same with an updated roster and slightly improved graphics and maybe new mechanics. But in 2022, I saw something that served as a beacon of light in the foggy doldrum of 2K whatever the and that was WrestleQuest. WrestleQuest was unlike anything I had seen before. First of all, it wasn't a wrestling combat simulator. It was a classic turn-based RPG. In a year already full of RPG goodness, both indie and AAA, this game, WrestleQuest, somehow stands out on its own. WrestleQuest decided to ask the question, what if you took Chrono Trigger and added wrestling elements with real wrestlers to it? It's a weird concept, but it works way better than I ever could have anticipated. Also, the wrestlers in WrestleQuest aren't necessarily like realistic looking wrestlers by any means. The aesthetic is that they all look like action figures because it's a toy box. So it looks like action figures I had when I was a kid in pixel form, and I am all about that. But the highlight for me was that it actually has licensed professional wrestlers in this game. Legends like Jake the Snake Roberts, Booker T, Diamond Dallas Page, André the Giant, Jeff Jarrett, and even Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah! So, it may seem like this is a game intended specifically for wrestling fans, but honestly, I don't think that's the case. Yes, the wrestling influence can be seen in the art direction and the story, but at the core of the game here is a phenomenal RPG. If, like me, you've missed games like Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, or even Super Mario RPG, then this game is as much for you as it is for the biggest Macho Man fan. Essentially, if any part of the phrase Saban suplexes a train interests you, then WrestleQuest is for you. I know I had to learn as much about this game as possible, and I was lucky enough to get in touch with the awesome folks over at MegaCat Studios. The more time I spent talking with them, the more I realized how much I have in common with MegaCat. Not only do we love professional wrestling, but we share a deep love for retro games. And MegaCat Studios has made and distributed over 30 original games for the NES, the SNES, and the Sega Genesis just since 2016. That is a lot of work for consoles that aren't even made anymore. And that's the kind of love and dedication you want working on a game that's so dependent on history and nostalgia for both professional wrestling and classic RPGs. What I'm getting at is that WrestleQuest has become close to my heart. It checks off a lot of the boxes on the things Gerard loves list, so I knew they would be a dream if I were ever to be involved with the game in some way. And sure enough, the folks at Mega Cat Studios are fans of mine, and they even put me in the game as an NPC. It's pretty cool stuff. Just to be clear though, I did not make any money off this cameo. In fact, I'm not the only cameo in the game. There's tons of people who are in it. But it is an honor just to say that I can be in the same video game as Jeff Jarrett or Diamond Dallas Page. Now, a peek behind the curtain. Usually speaking, when I get codes early, it's in a review/influencer cycle, which means I only have a week or two to complete the game. So you guys are probably wondering, hey, how did you do 90 hours in a week? I didn't. I had a lot more time because Mega Cat Studios said, nah, and they gave me this game incredibly early. I got this game so early that I was playing a developer build of it, so you may see some footage or glitches in this that aren't necessarily representative of the final product. Every time they found a bug, it was immediately updated and patched out. And I got to experience that firsthand. Does that mean that I'm biased towards WrestleQuest? I mean, yeah, I love wrestling, I love video games, and I make a cameo in the game. But just because I'm so close to it, that doesn't mean I'm gonna be sugarcoating everything I see here. The game is sweet enough as it is.
Nothing means nothing. Yeah, nothing means nothing.
What do you mean by that? Nothing means nothing.
Oh, yeah, it's going all the way to the top. Yeah, unjustifiably in a position I'd rather not be in. But yeah, the cream rises to the top. Oh, yeah, Gene. On balance, off balance, it doesn't matter. I'm better than you, yeah. It's the best ever doing, yeah.
With regards to the visuals of wrestling games, you can either get uncanny valley recreations of current wrestlers in the current 2K series, or bulbous caricatures like in the WWE All-Stars or WWE 2K Battleground series. WrestleQuest takes a unique approach that separates its presentation from everything that came before it. Mega Cat Studios knew that the game would need to appeal to more than just pro wrestling audiences for the game to be successful. Not to paint with a broad brush, but what's something that wrestling fans and gamers in general love? In my opinion, that's pretty easy. Toys. Toys have been a major part of the wrestling landscape since the 1980s. If there was one thing you wanted to do more than watch your favorite wrestlers go at it, it's get them in the ring with yourself. It was an absolute blast getting your hands on some action figures and getting to create your own storylines and dream matches. The only limit to these matches was your imagination, which was good because most kids didn't have access to every single wrestler in their toy chest. That means that every other toy you owned joined the roster of your at-home wrestling promotion. WrestleQuest reflects this playfulness with dozens of NPCs and enemies based on different types of toys, even archetypes of toys. Some characters are clearly based on real-life wrestlers, but you also see designs based on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Lego minifigures, Furbies, and a ton of other toys from the 80s and the 90s. And this fits in perfectly with the setting for WrestleQuest. The entire map is based on different types of playsets, from an area that feels like a combination of Stratego and Green Army Men to a cave made entirely out of Light Bright. And if you didn't think all that was enough, there's even a Barbie Malibu Mall. This creates a ton of variety and makes every location feel truly distinct from the others. Personally, the art direction is wonderful. Everything is chosen to harken back to more nostalgic times. And not only are the wrestlers and the majority of the toys from the 80s and the 90s, but the beautiful 16-bit graphics take you back to that era. The retro look isn't just because this is an indie game. It's the developers making a conscious decision to make WrestleQuest a love letter to that generation, which I grew up in and obviously have an internal soft spot for. All of these design details are incredibly cool, but I gotta say, the thing that really made me pop is seeing the actual wrestling superstars that I know and love. When you first start the game and leave the training area, you are immediately greeted by a massive statue dedicated to Macho Man Randy Savage. And when I say massive, I mean like Colossus of Rhodes huge. These monoliths to wrestling titans are scattered across the landscape and are treated like deities for the section they represent. When you go through the desert wasteland, the Road Warriors are there, looming over their destructive home. In the military battle zone, Sergeant Slaughter stands tall, and you can meet him in person too. I will say, something that doesn't always work with me 100% through is the sound design. Now, I love the deliciously crunchy sound effects associated with the battles, but the voice recordings seem off. Often they're too quiet, don't match up with the moment, relatively are generic, and more importantly, the quality of all their recordings is a bit off. From time to time, it can get distracting and take you out of the story, which is a shame because the story here is incredible. WrestleQuest's story is wrapped around what I would call the modern era of legend wrestling, which is every legendary wrestler has some kind of podcast or product, and usually that co-host is Conrad Thompson. The plot of WrestleQuest is told through the lens of Jeff Jarrett's podcast, My World, with Jeff Jarrett and co-hosted by Conrad Thompson. Throughout the podcast, Jeff and Conrad are talking with legendary wrestlers like Jake the Snake Roberts and Diamond Dallas Page about two great local wrestling legends, Macho Man Randy Santos and Brink Logan. I love this choice. Framing the plot through these beloved characters just makes it feel more real and adds a level of credibility. These are epic road stories that industry veterans are sharing with their fans. Granted, it does kind of act as a promotional tool for their podcasts, but let's be honest, everyone's got a podcast nowadays, and it thematically makes sense. Speaking of which, I have a podcast called Friends Per Second. It's over on SkillUp's channel. You start the story off with Macho Man, a spicy tribute to Randy Savage. A young upstart just leaving wrestling school, he wants nothing more than to reach the same heights as the Macho Man. You have to decide, are you going to do it as an honest wrestler, or are you going to get there doing whatever dirty deeds need to be done? Soon after that beginning, we teleport and transfer you to an ice zone, where we take control of Brink Logan, a member of the respected Logan family. Brink isn't quite as flashy as other wrestlers, but there is no one quite better than him in the ring. Despite his desire to perform in bigger, more recognized promotions, he believes that family comes first, sticking behind to make his opponents look better alongside his tag team partner and cousin, Stag Logan. And eventually, the duo get their due. For those of you who don't know, this setup is an homage to the Hart family, who have been in the wrestling business for decades. Brink and Stag represent two of their most famous members, Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim Neidhart, respectively. And there are plenty of characters like this who aren't real-life wrestlers, but clearly have their inspirations. The main plot of the story swaps back and forth between Macho Man and Brink Logan, showing their parallel journeys and how they're eventually forced to collide in epic fashion, as is often the case in good old wrestling feuds. These wrestling tropes and references are elevated by the grandeur associated with a certain generation of RPGs. WrestleQuest is an ensemble piece and feels larger than life, but there's a deep humanity at play here. Yes, the focus is on Macho Man and Brink Logan, but every side character that joins the party becomes just as deep and complex. And you even get to spend time with these characters as the leads. All these characters go through a variety of emotions that you wouldn't expect from a wrestling video game. Almost every modern wrestling game basically recaps that year leading up with its release. When they do have an original story mode, it tends to be a pretty basic framework of wrestling plots that you get. Whatever character you create just gets inserted into a story that the player has already seen and hopefully ascends to, eventually ending with them becoming a part of the Hall of Fame or winning the Royal Rumble, etc. However, every character's journey in WrestleQuest feels like it can be the basis of its own game. You wind up caring about everyone, even the joke characters. Sure, Luchador is a pun combining a luchador and a type of fish, but his story of honor and avenging the disgrace of his father's legacy is compelling, and it ties in directly with The Brooder, an homage to Hulk Hogan, brother. All of the characters are connected through the various wrestling territories within the world of their towns and regions. However, one stands supreme, PAW. PAW is the WWE of WrestleQuest, meaning it's the biggest and most recognized promotion in the land. Throughout the game, PAW continues to absorb smaller promotions and monopolize the industry. Some love the company for providing stability. Others hate it for ruining any kind of competition, splitting up every character we meet down the opposite side. In the end, everything ties back to Macho Man and Brink Logan, especially since they serve as leaders for their opposing sides. Macho and Brink are destined to battle each other, especially since only one wrestler can stand supreme in all of the land. And when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, you know it's going to result in an epic battle for the ages. The best stories in wrestling, and RPGs for that matter, are built around conflict. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. They can be perceived as just as compelling as something like Cloud versus Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII, or Red versus Blue in the original Pokemon. It's the same with Macho Man and Brink Logan. Despite their opposing views and different styles, both are the most talented grapplers of their age and aiming for the highest of highs. This makes WrestleQuest's story the cream of the crop. And as Macho Man fans know, the cream always will rise to the top. You can always tell when a team really cares about what they've been doing and working on. And the people at Mega Cat Studios clearly love classic wrestling. Every part of WrestleQuest is a throwback to the 80s and 90s in general, with plenty of personalities and designs that harken back to that magical time. And they bring that love and attention to detail into the game mechanics.
Ooh, yeah. The Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour. Funky like a monkey. The sky's the limit and space is the place. Ooh, yeah.
Mega Cat Studios is well known for their pixel art, and the awesome visuals and art design will naturally be the first thing you notice about WrestleQuest. But that's not the biggest thing that sets it apart from other wrestling games. In my eyes, that would be the classic retro RPG gameplay. And honestly, it works real well. Wrestling video games have usually been slower moving, third-person, 3D fighting games. The notable ones let players move anywhere and just do about anything you can see in a real-life wrestling match. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun to be your favorite superstars and use their signature moves. That's been the case for the last several decades. But because this gameplay copies moves from wrestling doesn't mean that it feels like wrestling. There are bigger overarching storylines, and every individual match has its own tale to tell. It can be a David versus Goliath situation where a smaller guy tries to topple a giant, an evenly matched back and forth defined by who makes the first mistake, or even a complete squash match with one wrestler dominating the other. Most matches in a regular wrestling game feel like the latter, where you develop a pattern and use that to easily defeat your opponents. However, WrestleQuest doesn't let that happen because of its turn-based combat. At a glance, WrestleQuest may seem like any other RPG with a pro wrestling coat of paint to it. Your party is made up of 1 to 3 people, and you get 4 options for your turns: attack, items, gimmick, and taunt. You'll have to utilize these to either defeat your opponents by knockout or pinning them, which is decided by a quick minigame. The attack and items tab are fairly self-explanatory. You perform a basic attack, where you use an item. Attack stands out a little bit since you need to press a timed button press to land that hit. If you're successful, you can possibly bounce your opponent off the ropes to hit them a second time. However, things start to change when you look at gimmicks and taunts. Gimmicks are like special abilities or spells. These are more powerful attacks or supporting moves wrestler can perform at the cost of some AP. Attacking gimmicks can deal some extra damage, spread to hit more than one opponent, or hinder enemies with a status effect. The supporting moves can heal allies or boost stats to make your team stronger. These are all individualized depending on which party member uses them. Finally, there's taunting. If you choose to taunt, you'll take extra damage until your next turn in order to significantly boost your hype meter, the thing that really makes these battles interesting. For every match, you'll be in front of a roaring crowd of Ninja Turtles, Troll Dolls, and other iconic toys. Since this is wrestling, you'll want to impress them as much as possible. Doing so will increase your hype and provide your entire faction with benefits like moves doing more damage, improved dodging, more money, things of that nature. Taunting is a great way to build up a lot of hype quickly, but you can also do it by just landing attacks and executing gimmicks correctly. Yet, your opponents can do the same, swinging the hype meter in their favor and hurting you in the process. In order to counteract this, you'll have to take advantage of the different hype types. WrestleQuest features 5 different hype types that each build up the hype meter in different ways, and you can assign them to any character in your party at any given moment. For example, a powerhouse character builds up hype by landing regular attacks and knocking opponents out, whereas a technician does the same by pinning opponents, nailing button presses, and inflicting debuff spells. You can't assign any type to any character, but some individuals work best with specific hype types. This can add to a whole new level of complexity to every battle. If an enemy is down, I know I need to pin them with a technician. It makes every match, no matter how easy or predictable, feel like it has an arc to it. If the devs left the combat there, I'd be happy, but they continued to add more and more wrestling goodness that deepens the battle system. Every character has different tag team moves they can use with 1 or 2 different people. These moves are much more powerful than your standard gimmicks and can completely turn the tide of battle. There are also managers who benefit your party with passive abilities and gimmicks you can activate instead of a faction member's turn. Finally, there are summons, and these are absolutely devastating. Now, all the real-life wrestlers who are licensed in this game, they can be a manager and help you in battle, or they can gift you a signature piece of their equipment. But the best ones of all are the legends that operate as summons. They're able to come in and perform a gnarly move unlike anything your party can do. For example, André the Giant can just come in and flip the entire ring. The Road Warriors can jump in and perform the Doomsday device. Or you can just summon the La Parka family and suddenly everyone's got a chair. It's summertime chair party, baby. I love these summons. Bringing in Booker T feels just as epic as summoning Bahamut. What a sentence. And to find all the summons, you're going to have to explore as much of that awesome world map that we talked about earlier to finish their side quests. Every summon, let alone every legendary wrestler in this game, is attached to a side quest that often involves a lot of backtracking, but getting to explore the different areas and learn their puzzles is a ton of fun. My one complaint is that you tend to move fairly slow around the map. Okay, another complaint I have actually is the minigames. Throughout the game, there are minigames that exist to create some variety in the gameplay. Some of these are a lot of fun, like the one that is basically Jump King. However, a majority of them are kind of basic, and some of them are even frustrating. Like, for example, in order to get Jake the Snake Roberts to join your party, you have to play Jake the Snake's Snake game. It is Snake on like a little gaming console, and you have to get the highest score, and that can take a while depending on your ability at playing Snake. However, in the grand scheme of things, these minor complaints are very far and few between. Every match, side quest, and storyline is fun and requires different strategy, especially when it comes to the big boss fight matches, where you have to meet certain requirements to win. In fact, those requirements in the match are more important than defeating the boss half the time. I'm not usually a fan of this because I just want to play the game that I want to play, but these moments against the bosses feel important. It's like watching a feud end with a stipulation at a pay-per-view. It was already fun watching these guys do the regular matches. Now let's see them do it in a steel cage. Mega Cat Studios could have just made this game a traditional RPG, and that would have been fine. I would have been happy with that, and we would have moved on. Instead, they took it a bit further by adding the hype system and making each battle feel more like a real-life wrestling match than a standard wrestling game. Every one of these matches feels like a step towards achieving Macho Man and Brink Logan's ultimate goals, being the best at what they do. And by the end of the game, I felt like I was on that journey with them, especially since completing WrestleQuest is less like a wrestling storyline and more like a traditional epic RPG saga.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it, yeah. I'm all for it. Let me just reach my hand right through the video scope and congratulate you. Yeah, do your thing. Have your reign, yeah. Just know that I'm coming for you. I'm right on your heels, and I am the best thing in professional wrestling right now. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, the main story is much bigger than you'd expect for an indie game based on pro wrestling, which total playtime reflects that. Now, to be clear, it took my first playthrough casually playing about 55 to 60 hours. I say casual because I often took my time to explore the environments around me. If I got a side quest, I made it my duty to walk around and try and fulfill that quest. To give you guys an idea, there's not really a world map outside of the main hub, and in the right corner you have what's called an objective map. This generally just points you in the direction of where the next quest is. So more often than not, you're just going to be following these question marks and exclamation points and hoping that you'll find a quest. As a reminder, it took me 90 hours total, and I didn't really have help or a guide to get me there. But that said, that's a good amount of content, but maybe not for the reasons that you think. So let's recap. It took me 90 hours to complete this game, and 2/3 of that was just finishing the main storyline the first time through. That's about the length of 2 old-school Final Fantasy games at this point in my life. Part of why it took so long is because of the lack of familiarity that comes with beating a game that has not been released yet. In fact, WrestleQuest got delayed by 2 weeks. But the rest is because there's so much to do and the game compels you to do it. When you get notified of a potential side quest connected to André the Giant, you want to complete that right away. Also, every single map that you are on, when you walk in, it tells you how many chests you've collected. Every single map encourages you to get them all. And once you open one, it then gives you the percentage saying how much of the area's chest you've already opened. Naturally, seeing that number go up makes me want to find every single chest that I can. Unfortunately, not every chest can be opened when you first enter the section, hence a lot of the backtracking. That said, it's pretty easy to go back to every place at the end of the game and search for what you missed. And when you have every wrestler with each ability in your stable, it gets easier to unlock everything. Which reminds me, this game has a whopping 122 achievements in-game. Again, 122 in-game achievements. That may seem daunting, but a majority of them will unlock as you complete the story or participate in combat. For example, there are a bunch of achievements attached to just attacking or using specific types of gimmicks a certain amount of times. These will unlock just by playing the game naturally, no problem. And the good thing is that none of these are really missable. It's the same with the WrestlePedia, this game's version of a bestiary. Just by playing the game, you're going to encounter all 74 enemies WrestleQuest has to offer. It's no sweat finding them all, making the achievement a cinch to finish. For the ones that won't unlock automatically, the achievements tell you how to complete them, so that's easy as well. More often than not, they encourage you to try new things in combat, keeping the whole experience feeling fresh. That being said, there is one achievement that's going to take you a lot longer to unlock than the others. As you play through the game, Macho Man and Brink Logan will be faced with choices. These choices dictate whether these characters are a babyface, meaning a good guy, or a heel, meaning a bad guy. That's right, this game has a morality system. Morality systems can be the kiss of death when it comes to the completion process. They can make additional playthroughs feel just as satisfying, however, like in The Force Unleashed. Other times, they can just feel tacked on or unnecessary, like in The Force Unleashed 2. Fortunately, WrestleQuest lands in the former category. Macho Man's morality has a drastic effect on your playthrough, determining which characters you can recruit to your stable, and even adding additional boss fights. It makes you actually want to play both sides to see everything the story has to offer. Since the achievement simply calls for maxing out your morality in both directions, you don't actually have to complete an entire second playthrough. That's why I said 1.5 playthroughs. There is no New Game Plus, but your achievements in-game and on Steam and wherever you play will carry over. So I'm calling it there. Basically, play the game all the way through, do all the content, experience everything you can, then you're gonna start out one more time to blast through and get that one achievement left. WrestleQuest is a game that begs to be completed and is filled to the brim with things to do and small milestones that constantly motivate you to keep going. But the best thing working for it is that it's just a good game, and that's enough reason alone to keep playing it. WrestleQuest doesn't have much of a completion bonus to speak of, but completing the game feels like a reward within itself. Nothing feels tacked on for the sake of making the game longer. It all enhances the experience and makes the strengths of WrestleQuest stand out even more. That being said, I do have to shout out something that's special to me. I am in this game. I'm not a professional wrestler, but I have been a stalwart supporter of WrestleQuest ever since I heard about it. Because of this, MegaCat Studios put me in the game. You can actually see me at the beginning of Brink Logan's story right near Angry Joe. Hi Joe! That's right, there's more than one YouTuber in this game. In fact, there are dozens of gaming and wrestling influencers and creators all throughout the game. Honestly, I'm honored to be in this game, especially with so many different people that I love and respect from wrestling and from YouTube. Thanks again, MegaCat Studios, for including me in this journey. With that said, it's time for me to cut a promo on my final thoughts of WrestleQuest. And this is all no script, off the cuff. Looking back at this 90-hour journey, I had a blast with the story. But replaying the entire game again halfway through to get that final achievement is a slog. It's a lot to think about when it comes to completing this game. At the time of this recording, there is not really a completion reward, if you will. There doesn't necessarily have to be, but the achievements otherwise paint a broader picture that encourages completion. And in actuality, in doing all the achievements, what it's really encouraging you isn't to complete the game, but to see all the content that's in the game. It is kind of frustrating, but there is a silver lining here to help you guys out. If you've already beaten the game and you want to get that final achievement, I recommend using the accessibility options. There are options in the accessibility that prohibit you from dying, give you ultimate power, and even include things like auto pinning and auto mini games. So in battle, you're basically just bashing your way through to get to that point in the game where you can build your karma meter up by making the right or wrong decisions. Despite the few frustrating elements of completion, I still had a blast playing through WrestleQuest. If you like retro RPGs, you'll find yourself loving the combat and the exploration. If you're a wrestling fan, you're gonna fall in love with the story of two up-and-coming wrestlers reaching the big time, the highs and the lows included. WrestleQuest feels like a revolutionary event at the crossroads between gaming and wrestling. And all I can really say is I hope to see more games like this in the future. WrestleQuest is everything a wrestling fan like me could want, let alone a RPG fan could want from a game like this. It pays homage to the history of sports entertainment while also having fun with the classic rags to riches storytelling that has worked in professional wrestling for well over a century. WrestleQuest also features great classic RPG style gameplay And while there may be too much running back and forth between the side quests and the main objectives, it gives you a chance to explore the awesome world that the team over at MegaCat Studios have created. Now, as you all can plainly see after watching this video, I am heavily involved at this point with this game. Not only am I in it, but apparently, I'm not a spoiler, but maybe or maybe not, I'm not sure yet, there may be an achievement in the game related to me at some point in a patch or something. So there's no way I can give WrestleQuest an official completionist rating, even if that doesn't work out. Who knows? Just know that this game is a ton of fun, and I could not recommend it more for RPG fans and wrestling fans out there. It's not honest for me to give it a rating, you know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense.
Oh, so that's why I'm gonna give it my macho rating of completed. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
No,
we're doing it.
No, we're
it's
good.
Already
no rating. No rating
happening.
needed. Guys, thank you so much for watching. And hey, if you want some more wrestling fun, you can check out my other video on SmackDown vs. Raw with Xavier Woods, Austin Creed.
Or you could just stick around and watch me put the hurt on Gerard.
No, we're not gonna do that. So stop it. No.
We just get you a little awkward here.
This is
we
weird.
Just get you a little awkward here. Say, get you one of these.
Help.
Yeah, let me just get you one of these.